Swords conquer physically. Staffs command reality. These weren't weapons designed to win battles. They were designed to override the laws the battles were happening inside. And before we had nuclear deterrence, ancient mythology had the Brahmadanda. Vasishtha's Brahmadanda. The Brahmastra was Hinduism's divine nuclear option, capable of annihilating entire armies, poisoning land for generations, and collapsing the sky itself. It wasn't a soldier's weapon. It was a god's final sentence, a declaration that the conversation was over and the losing side would cease to exist. When Vishwamitra aimed it directly at the sage Vasishtha, every witness had the same thought: this man is about to die. He simply held out his staff. The Brahmadanda swallowed it whole. No explosion, no shockwave. Silence. But look closer. This wasn't deflection. Vasishtha didn't block the Brahmastra. He nullified it at a level beneath the physics of the attack. Vishwamitra had firepower. Vasishtha had authority over the system that firepower ran on. Raw force, no matter how divine, cannot overwrite its own operating system. The Brahmadanda represented Brahman itself, the foundational substrate of reality, and nothing built from reality can unmake the foundation it was built upon. Here's the terrifying part. Vasishtha never attacked back. He didn't need to. When you hold that rank, you don't fight enemies. You make their weapons forget they were ever a threat. Aaron's rod. Pharaoh had his own staffs. His court magicians weren't frauds. Egyptian tradition held that trained priests could genuinely channel divine force. When Moses and Aaron arrived demanding the release of an enslaved people, Pharaoh called his best. They threw their rods. The rods became serpents, a confident counter-demonstration. Whatever power you carry, we carry it too. Then Aaron threw his rod. Also a serpent. It ate every single one of theirs. But there's a catch most people overlook. After Pharaoh refused again, Aaron's rod bloomed. Overnight, sealed inside the tabernacle with no soil, no water, no sunlight, it produced buds, blossoms, and ripe almonds simultaneously, on a dead piece of cut wood. This is a biological override, a command issued to living matter that bypasses the laws of botany, chemistry, and time at once. The rod was stored in the Ark of the Covenant afterward, not as a weapon, as proof that the authority behind it could rewrite what living organisms are permitted to do. The rod of Asclepius. Every hospital on Earth carries this image. Most people assume it's a metaphor for healing. It is not. Asclepius brought the dead back to life, not the near dead, not the almost gone. People who had completed the full journey to the other side, and he retrieved them repeatedly using this rod. Here's the terrifying part. Hades noticed. The lord of the underworld filed a formal complaint to Zeus. His population quotas were collapsing. Souls were supposed to arrive and stay. That arrangement was the structural agreement holding cosmic order together. Asclepius was dismantling it one patient at a time. Zeus struck Asclepius down with a thunderbolt. Not punishment, a patch, a deliberate correction to close a mortality exploit before the entire architecture of existence became unstable. The rod survived, because some knowledge is too dangerous to destroy. It became the symbol of medicine, the field that has been chasing the exact same exploit ever since and keeps getting closer. The first 3 staffs broke physics, biology, and death itself. But the next one doesn't target any system outside you. It targets the one running inside every person in the room, and once it fires, there is no recall. Dionysus's Thyrsus. Look at this thing. A giant fennel stalk, a pine cone on top, wrapped in ivy. This is the Thyrsus, the sacred staff of Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and the layer of human psychology civilization has spent 6,000 years trying to keep sedated. It weighs almost nothing. A child could carry it. It looks like a joke. That is exactly what makes it the most psychologically devastating weapon on this list. The Thyrsus doesn't target soldiers, it targets civilization's internal architecture, the invisible machinery that makes order possible. Every functioning society runs on one assumption, that individuals will suppress their worst impulses long enough for order to hold. The Thyrsus dissolves that suppression simultaneously, across an entire crowd, without warning. The Maenads became physiologically superhuman, tearing live bulls apart with bare hands, impervious to cold and pain. King Pentheus of Thebes spied on their rites and was discovered. His own mother led the group that tore him apart. She carried his head home, believing she had killed a lion. She genuinely could not perceive what she had done. But look closer. The Thyrsus didn't inject violence. It removed the governor on impulses that were already there. Here's the terrifying part. You didn't need to be struck by it. You just needed to be present when the threshold broke. Once enough individuals lose the governor simultaneously, the crowd stops being a collection of people. It becomes a single organism with no ceiling on force and no memory of what it was before. Mass contagion. Zero defense. No antidote. The Egyptian Was-Sceptre. Before Egypt had pharaohs, it had a cosmological problem. Chaos existed, not disorder. Primordial chaos. The howling void that reality had been carved from, always pushing to reclaim what had been taken. Desert storms weren't weather events in Egyptian theology. They were the border of reality vibrating under pressure. The Was-Sceptre held the border. Its animal head depicted Set's sacred creature, the beast of storms. Its forked base touched the ground, anchored to the earth and aimed at the sky, holding the vertical axis of existence in place against the forces trying to dissolve it into nothing. This is not decoration. The Was-Sceptre represented absolute dominion over chaos. Set used it not to destroy storms, but to govern them. To say, this disorder operates within the boundaries I define. This was not a staff for winning battles. This was the object held by beings personally responsible for preventing the universe from collapsing back into the void it came from. Every image of a god or pharaoh raising the Was-Sceptre communicates one sentence. I am the reason entropy has not won yet. That is not a boast. That is a job description. The khatvanga skull staff. Every necromancer's staff in modern fantasy traces its lineage here, the khatvanga, a human long bone, a skull at the top, carried by Shiva in his most terrifying aspect, wielded by tantric practitioners as an interface between the living world and the domain of death. But look closer. This isn't dark because it uses human remains. In tantric logic, the skull is not a symbol of death. It is proof that the practitioner has faced impermanence completely, absorbed it, and come out the other side holding death as a tool. The khatvanga pinned demons not through force, but through a quality the demons themselves could not access, a total absence of existential fear. You cannot threaten with death a being who carries death in their hand and calls it a scepter. Every fictional descendant is a pale copy, the aesthetics without the philosophy. 6 staffs have broken physics, biology, death, the human mind, cosmic order, and existential fear. The final 3 don't just command power over systems, they command power over the boundary those systems were built to protect, and what's on the other side will redefine what it means to be mortal. The kakara, shakujo. That staff that just broke open the gates of hell? It's a monk's walking stick with bells on it. The kakara chimes softly with every step to warn insects not to be crushed underfoot. By design, a kindness bell, the most outwardly pacifist object on this list. But there's a catch, and this one is not incidental. It is the entire point. Bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who delay their own liberation to help others still suffering, carried the kakara into places no amount of force could reach. Jizo Bodhisattva descends into hell realms to retrieve souls left behind, and the kakara is what breaks those gates open from the outside. The same staff that steps around insects on a mountain path dismantles the architecture of the underworld. Here's the terrifying part. That gap is not irony. It is the entire argument. The most powerful force in existence is compassion, with no limit on where it is willing to go. The kakara doesn't break hell through strength, it breaks hell because the being carrying it refuses to leave anyone inside, not force, refusal to leave. Yama's Danda. Yama's Danda doesn't fight, it doesn't deflect or destroy, it executes one function with a precision no other instrument on this list can match: karmic judgment, administered without appeal. When your time arrives, and Yama alone determines when that is, the Danda is present for the full auditing of your soul's accumulated weight. Every action across your entire life measured against what you owed. No lawyer, no delay, no running. Here's the terrifying part. It doesn't even need to be swung. Its presence means the verdict is already decided by the sum of everything you have ever done. The rod is not the judgment. It is the formalization of a judgment that was always going to be exactly what it is. Honestly, this operates on the exact same logic as hearing your mother call you by your full legal name from across the house. You don't run, you don't fight back, you just accept that your entire life is about to be audited and the judgment is final. No staff on this list required less and accomplished more. Ultimate power doesn't always look like force. Sometimes it looks like a simple rod held by someone who already knows the verdict before you enter the room. Dagda's Lorg Mor. The Dagda, all-father of the Irish Tuatha Ha De Da Nan, carried a staff called the Lorg Mor, the Great Club, and the mythology surrounding it is offensively straightforward about what it does. One end kills 9 men instantly, reduces them to dust on contact. Touch them with the other end, they return to life. But there's a catch, and this is where the Lorg Mor separates itself from everything else. Every other staff on this list commands one domain: spiritual rank, biology, death's quota, the human mind, cosmic order, existential fear, compassion's reach, karmic consequence. The Lorg Mor commands the boundary that all of those domains sit beside. Not life, not death. The line between them. The border every civilization, every religion, every living thing has eventually been forced to kneel before. The Dagda holds that border in both hands and sets it to 0 or 1 at will. Mortality, the one constant every living thing has been required to submit to, becomes a setting he adjusts. Ultimate power isn't destroying everything in your path. It is being the only entity that can look directly at death and say, not yet, now. Actually, let's undo that entirely. A sword makes a choice, and the choice holds. A staff like this unmakes the choice. And that, across every civilization, every pantheon, every mythology that ever tried to answer what real power looks like, is the answer they kept arriving at, not the blade, the staff, not the force, the authority. From nullifying divine weapons to governing the binary switch of mortality, these 9 staffs represented absolute administrative privileges over reality itself. They prove that ancient civilizations didn't imagine ultimate power as sharper blades, but as the authority to edit the rules everyone else had to live under. If this changed how you see power itself, hit like, subscribe to the Mythic Sun, and click the next video on screen, because we are just getting started.